Welcome to our first edition of the Compliance Digest, presenting regulatory compliance. My name is Alex Krenke. With me this week is Aaron Thompson, who you may be familiar with from our FIRMO and Best Practice webinars. This week, we're going to deliver topics on the BD's top 5 biggest compliance failures as presented by the NASAA. For those of you who are unfamiliar with this organization, it stands for the North American Securities Administrators Association. So, Aaron, for starters, tell us about the NASAA article that's been picking up steam in the industry.
Absolutely, Alex. Great article, result of a study that they completed. They were looking at 250 examinations, and they found 450 violations. And what was great about this is they highlighted it in terms of topics, talking about the highest percentage and order of situations, and then also added best practices, which were actually very practical and helpful for the industry.
Could you just go into some of the best practices then?
We'll start with the ones that were the highest frequency, books and records, and that was talking about the best practice would be making sure that you're handling customer complaints correctly, and then making sure that you're handling correspondence and electronic correspondence specifically. The next highest area was supervision, which gets into making sure you're doing branch audits properly, and a good portion of those should be surprise audits and true surprise audits. And lastly, sales practices, always a popular topic, and one specific example that I liked, which is easy to implement, is if you have a representative that does a lot of guest speaking, as manager or supervisor, you should go and attend a few of those sessions, show up randomly, and make sure that the right activities are occurring.
So, knowing the best practices, that's great. It's a great start. Any ideas on implementation?
I wanted to talk about the customer complaints because that's an area that's a little bit more difficult to enforce. Let's talk about why that is. There are different areas of your firm that have kind of competing interests when it comes to customer complaints. We'll start with compliance. Compliance is probably saying, send everything my way, I'll decide whether it's a complaint. Representatives are on the other end. They're saying, well, it's my customer and I'm doing the right things for them, and they're just confused. I'm going to handle the situation with a good phone call, and I'll turn an angry customer into a happy customer. And then supervisors kind of caught in the middle. They want to have access to the right information, but they can't sit on every phone call and they can't be in every investor meeting. So how do you handle that? I would start by having a really frank conversation with these different groups about what is a complaint and what is not a complaint. And you need to get into specifics, otherwise people are just going to be confused. A good way to do this would be to take 3 situations, one being a severe situation, clearly a complaint, then something middle of the road, and then on the other end, a situation that just clearly is not a complaint. Help people understand the parameters, and that's a good starting point. And then from there, each of these groups need to be questioned and attested to their specific role in customer complaints. A great spot for that is the annual compliance questionnaire. Beyond that, supervisors need to make sure that they are doing their work to, monitor phone calls, attend some meetings, and make sure they're kind of identifying who might be potentially doing the wrong things and having some practices that are bad customer complaints. But then further than that, common sense can be a great way to do this as well. If you're in your office, your supervisor, and you hear one of your representatives out on the floor having a challenging conversation, figure out how you can help the situation, and then afterwards look into that and problem solve and kind of figure out where was that disconnect, and is it an issue with sales practice with a particular representative. Kind of identify that bad apple in the bunch. And if you're doing those things, that's a great way to handle customer complaints. And it is a challenging area, but if you do it well, it can be really important for your firm.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then another thing that we always recommend is having some way of cataloging or tracking this information. For instance, if you're going out and performing these audits and you're looking at these branches and you're noticing some trends, maybe it's a specific branch that's been throwing up these red flags on a suitability issue, or maybe it's a specific rep bad apple who's raising concerns within your firm, it's important to keep that information on file so that not only do you know it for your own personal records, but it's important for the sake of your own firm's reputation with the public and with FINRA. So what we recommend, like I'm saying, is cataloging that information.
Great way to do that. Totally agree with your comments, is to take that and turn that into some type of easy to use tracking mechanism for the supervisor's activity. If you really want to improve customer complaints, maybe you require on a monthly basis that supervisors fill out a questionnaire saying, I did my job when it came to customer complaints. For branch audits, like you're saying, let's make sure that that is looking at those areas, and then how can you document that easily? It's pretty hard to do on paper at this point. Use a tracking system.
Absolutely, absolutely. One of the other things, just to change gears a little bit, but we're still talking about supervision. Social media, hot topic in the industry. I know it's been on FINRA's list since January of this year. From what we've been hearing from our own clients is that it's been coming up in a lot of audits as well. Specifically, how are you monitoring your reps' activity on social media websites? Are you archiving this information? Are you following 10-39? Are you following the rules, basically, that they laid out? So this was mentioned in the correspondence section. What's the latest update with this hot topic?
It was in the correspondence section, and it was really prominent. We didn't know exactly how many of these 450 violations came from social media, but we do know that the article specifies basically there's a risk with anything other than company email. Representative has a company email address. It's pretty easy to monitor that. Besides that, there's LinkedIn. Then there is personal email, which everyone has, and those gives plenty of opportunity for representatives to kind of go off and do the wrong things. And if you do have a bad apple, they're going to be using those methods. So it's really important that you have a great relationship with your social media and email compliance archiving vendors. And if you do happen to be in the camp that is just kind of pretending that LinkedIn isn't happening, that your representatives don't use LinkedIn, you're headed for some extreme risk. Best case, maybe you have a painful audit in 2013. Worst case is you're looking at fines.
Yeah, it's true. For those of you who aren't familiar, QuestC is also a vendor for social media compliance and archiving. One of the things that we always talk about is when we are on the phone with somebody who says, oh, it's just not in our budget, we don't have a solution right now, is the counterpoint is it in your budget right now for a FINRA fine? And we don't say that to be rude, we just say that as it's a good precaution to take into consideration when moving forward this year, especially since FINRA's already stated that it's going to be one of their main focus points during their audits. So it's just a best practice tip to stay up to date with those audit trends, and then make sure that whatever FINRA has on their docket for the year that you have covered and you have an answer prepared. So as we're closing out this topic for this week, if you had one takeaway, if you had to identify one takeaway from this article, and it was much larger than just 5 of the biggest compliance failures, what would that be?
A lot of great information. It was somewhat difficult to identify that, but I'd have to go with the mention of written supervisory procedures. It's just really important that you have, as a firm, really come up with your own procedures that match your firm. You need to tailor it. That involves saying, this is our business model, this is the risks that we have, and this is how we're mitigating those risks, and these are the procedures and the checklists and the activities that need to be done to make sure it all works. That's the camp you want to be in. You do not want to be in the other camp, which I'm afraid is probably a majority of firms out there, where to develop their WSP, they probably hired an outside firm, probably spent a bunch of money, and ended up with a cookie cutter policy, almost the same as everyone out there. And FINRA is going to see right through that. They are going from firm to firm, and if they see all those same terminology and activities, page numbers are almost the same, that's going to put you into a painful starting point at the beginning of an audit. You do not want to be like that. You want to make sure you tear it up, and the key rules are with written supervisory procedures. If it's in a WSP, you're doing it. If it's not in the WSP, but it's perceived as a best practice or something that your firm should do, you need to outline why it doesn't apply.
I couldn't agree anymore. What we always call the written supervisory procedure, affectionately so, a Quest CE is the Bible for your firm element program. Essentially, that's what FINRA is going to look at when they come in for an audit. That's what they're going to accept as the standard for your program that year. So it's important that it's not only accurate, but that you're following it to the exact extent that you said you were going to. So, great recommendation for the audience, and thank you for passing that along.
Absolutely.
And that'll actually wrap up our topic for this week. Join us next week for the Compliance Digest. We'll be presenting on another brand new compliance topic affecting you and your reps.